France winning the Second World War in the Kaisertum universe would be tricky, but not impossible. Let me show you how this could have happened, and the world after that. This is a bonus episode on the Project Kaisertum series, so check out the playlist if you haven't seen any of the previous episodes. One obvious way that France could win the Second World War is if the British join their side, but for this to happen, the Popular Front in France needs to win the 1928 election. This would make France socialist, and with Britain being led by the Social Democrat Labour Party, their relations might never fall out. With the alliance of France and Britain still standing, the two countries can work together to topple the German hegemony over the continent of Europe. I think that by having Britain on the side of the Axis of Revenge instead of the German sphere, this would tip the scale in favor of the Axis of Revenge. To make France win under these conditions, we would need to change some things prior to that, however. The super heavy tank was a big gamble for the French, which resulted in a failure, as we all know. So what if France used these resources to build something else? Honestly, the French could go down the conventional path of air, tanks and infantry, but they can also do a railway gun. This would be especially useful in Belgium and the Netherlands, whose railroads are very advanced and could allow for a quick movement of the railway gun, putting the German Rhineland in danger. The other changes I would like to make is to have the Salonika Pact, excluding Romania, be allied with the Russians. This is possible as in 1925 these countries worked together with Russia during the wars of the Ottoman co-ops. If we alter the history, it's possible to have the Salonika Pact have favorable relations with Russia, due to their shared Orthodox faith. Russia would promise the Salonika Pact control over most of Illyria, Dobruja and the Turkish Sultanate. Romania would of course be partitioned in these plans, as Hungary would take their claimed lands, together with Russia retaking Bessarabia. I think that if this is the case, the Salonika Pact would drift towards the Russian sphere, as they would have simply more to gain. Naturally, this would put Italy in the German sphere instead, so these may be the sides of this alternate Second World War. Zooming out and knowing the situation, I'd say that with a few changes, we gave the Axis of Revenge a favorable condition to win. All that had to happen is for France to go socialist instead of ultranationalist, and the Salonika Pact to ally with Russia, and by extension the Axis of Revenge. My point of divergence for France, and by extension the Axis of Revenge, to win the Second World War would come after the 8th episode, where France and Russia had solid gains, with Germany not being able to defend themselves effectively. We would have similar gains to this in the first year of the conflict, but then the Salonika Pact would strike Italy, who is the overlord of Illyria, as the Salonika Pact wants to take Illyria for themselves. This would result in the Turkish Sultanate to immediately join the Germans, going against the Axis of Revenge. As I said earlier, this would be perfect for Greece, as they would hope to gain even more lands in Anatolia, while the opposite is also true. This would serve as an opportunity for Turkey to reclaim Constantinople and Smyrna. The problem is that Germany doesn't have too many allies. They are allied with Italy, which is suboptimal to say the least, with the Turkish Sultanate, which is a shadow of its former glory, and with Persia. Of course, Germany is allied with their client states of Belgium, Poland, Ukraine, the Baltics and Finland, but these are generally considered minor states. This is why I would say that the Germans are going to suffer heavy losses on all sides. Italy in the previous episodes performed very well in this war, but this was because they didn't have to fight against France. Now the Italians are fighting on two fronts, which can expand into a third one if the British Navy invades Malta and lands in Sicily. This is why I would say that Illyria cannot stand any chance, and the state may quickly disintegrate. They were just 2 years prior to that a member of Austria-Hungary and Illyria, but now they would be in a personal union with the Italians, which I don't think would be too well received by its public. Hungary would also, instead of going for Vienna, would go for Zagreb, as they want to restore their access to the sea. Bulgaria and Albania would also go all in on Illyria, as there is really no chance for the young state to survive this amount of pressure. This is why most if not all of it would capitulate, with Germany and Italy coming in to fill in the gaps. At that point, I would say that the strategy for the Axis of Revenge would be to destroy Italy, as if this is done, it would leave Germany on a three-front war, basically on all sides. But also, the Germans would be completely encircled, with the British and French navies blockading them and starving the Germans into submission. The fall of Italy would be the key to Germany also falling, hence why I assume that the Axis of Revenge would prioritize them, while Russia would focus on Ukraine, as they want to link up with Hungary. I would say that Russia would lose a bit of land to Turkey and Persia, but they will not push beyond the Caucasus Mountains. Russia would strike the United Baltic Duchies, which, similar to the previous episode, would disintegrate into 3 separate states, making it easier for Russia to conquer most of them. Now the French don't have the experiment of the super heavy tanks, which were ineffective fuel-consuming machines on the battlefield. They would rely on conventional tactics and a couple of railway guns. These can be used in Belgium, as France needs to secure them before Germany reinforces the region. This is the #1 priority of France, as if Germany stations enough troops there, they can potentially take Paris again, just like how they did in the Great War. The French mindset of the war would be the best defense is offense. So they would strike Belgium in order to defend themselves. This is also a big gamble, but the French should not have a problem in taking Lille and advancing in Wallonia. In fact, the native French speakers would support this alternate France, because they are less extremist. In the original Kaisertum universe, France became ultra-nationalist and very extremist, so the people that they had just conquered didn't support the regime, but this time it's very different. This is why, if all goes well for the French, they can get all of Wallonia to rebel, and if it's coordinated successfully, it should leave a big German encirclement in Flanders, so yet again Germany would get Dunkirked. Now the French have secured defensible positions against the Germans, so they can send their troops south to Italy, with the goal to capitulate the nation. The British would do exactly the same, as they would take Malta, but fail to land in Sicily. As you can see, the Mediterranean is practically controlled by the axis of revenge. Germany would of course not sit idle, but the circumstances are dire, as in the Far East, Japan has also taken Qingdao, while Britain, Australia and New Zealand took out the German Pacific, including the German half of Papua Island. As for Africa, I would say that the Germans would hold out due to them dominating the continent. South Africa, which is a German ally, can join in this alternate war, as they want to take down the British dominion of Natal. This would tip the scale on the African front in favor of the Germans. Portugal is yet another German ally, as the Portuguese have a member of the House of Wettin in charge. This is because Portugal abandoned the House of Braganza as it was too pro-British and picked a German candidate. This means that the Kingdom of Portugal is overwhelmingly pro-Germany and anti-Britain, making their entry into the war on the German side inevitable. This matters especially in Africa, as Portugal would control these colonies, who would also go on the side of the German sphere. Hence why I think that Germany would become the masters of Africa in this alternate timeline. Yet the situation in Europe looks dire for them, but at least they have this going on for themselves, right? Well, since Portugal would join Germany, the Portuguese ally of Brazil is likely to do the same. Either that or Brazil would be inevitably invaded by the axis of revenge. This is because Brazil took advantage of France and Britain collapsing, so they annexed British Guyana and French Guinea. The Brazilians know that if the axis of revenge were to win against Germany, they would soon turn their sights to Brazil and reclaim their lost lands. This is why Brazil would inevitably also join the Germans, as this is their only chance to keep what they got. Most likely, these Brazilian troops would go to Africa, so yet again, this makes me think that Germany would dominate the continent. As far as the United States of America joining the German side, I'm not so sure. I think that the American public would be too split on the issue and never make a decision. This is unless the Japanese do what they do best and bring the Americans into the war by striking Pearl Harbor, but this is unlikely, as there is most likely no American embargo for Japan. As for now, I'd keep the Americans out of the war, for the reason I just mentioned, but also because the narrative of the video is about the axis of revenge winning. As if the United States were to join Germany, this would put two of the world's largest economies against the axis of revenge, so it may become an even battle. Going back to Europe, Russia would make Finland drop out of the war, as the Finns would be a kingdom, led by a German king. They would like to change this and become a republic, while also dropping out of the war. Russia would perform well in Ukraine, unlike in 2024. They will capture Kiev and expand beyond the Dnipro river. As for the Turkish Sultanate, the Salonika Pact would most likely take care of it, as they will not focus on pushing Italy just yet. They are waiting for France to be ready and push them out on both sides. This is why the Bosphorus Straits would be completely taken by the axis of revenge, which would supply Russia with infinite resources. This goes the other way around, as France was lacking resources, but now they would get them from Russia in a reliable way. Yet another micro win for the axis of revenge. Additionally, I would have Hungary take Vienna, because it was very close geographically to the Hungarian border, but also because Germany is having to spread all of their forces on all fronts. They are practically encircled, so the situation for them is looking dire. With the loss of Vienna, the German morale would drop, hence why desertions on the front lines would become more common. Inevitably, France would build up their offensive capabilities and strike Italy, where mountain combat would follow. As I said earlier, the French speakers would be supportive of this alternate France, so they would sabotage the Italian efforts and help France to advance on the front lines. The Salonika Pact would do the same, but from the flatlands of Istria instead of the mountainous Alps. This would put much pressure on Italy. That would trigger riots on the streets, with people calling for the war to end. This is why the British would try to land in Sicily, as they want to fuel the anger of the rebels, which would make Italy to crumble from within and drop out of the war. This is exactly what would happen, as the Italian rebels would manage to eliminate the king, Victor Emmanuel III, and establish a social republic. The rebels want to minimize their losses, so they would think that by establishing a socialist republic like the one in France, it would result in a milder peace treaty. This remains to be seen, but Germany still hasn't surrendered. But they would move in and occupy South Tyrol and take advantage of this weaker Italy. Despite the Germans performing well in Africa, the only front that truly matters is the European one, and there Germany is losing heart. Right now, they would be fighting enemies on all sides, and we all know how good Germany can perform on multiple fronts, right? I will not delay this war unnecessarily, so I would have Germany eventually surrender, maybe once the axis of revenge start to walk into its core territory. The peace treaty would be wild, so prepare for that. France and Britain would retake their colonies in South America, at the expense of Brazil. As for Africa, the Germans would be completely kicked out of the continent. In addition to that, Portugal would lose their colonies, while South Africa would be broken into smaller states and be forced to join the British Empire once again. Japan and Britain would split the German Pacific holdings. Now the meat of the peace deal, the European continent. The Turkish Sultanate would get partitioned, as Greece would expand drastically, with the rest becoming a Russian protectorate. Persia would lose Azerbaijan to Russia, and Kurdistan and Iraq to the Turkish Sultanate. Russia would completely annex the Baltics, Poland and Ukraine, while also taking Bessarabia from Romania. Bulgaria would take most of Illyria, as Hungary would want to get access to the sea, so they would reclaim Hungarian Croatia. The Bulgarians and Hungarians would also partition the rest of Romania, with the Rum state most likely becoming a Russian protectorate. France would take the French inhabited lands of Italy, Belgium and Germany, restoring the former glory of France. The United Kingdom would step in and most likely grant Flanders to the Netherlands. This time, the United Kingdom would protect the Netherlands, just like how they did with Belgium, as they would serve the same role, as a buffer state between France and Germany. Britain would take Malta from Italy, but also I see Italy being divided in two. The Kingdom of Italy in the south, where it would be allied with the British, while the north would remain the before mentioned Italian Socialist Republic, allied with France. Austria-Bohemia would be liberated as a French ally, and they would gain all of Slovenia. This leaves us with the elephant in the room, which is Germany. One option is to completely break Germany into smaller states, but this would be hard to enforce. Still, I have no doubts that this is exactly what each of these European countries want to do with Germany. There is no United States of America to stop this nonsense, but in addition, the axis of revenge is mostly made up of extremist governments, aka socialists and dictatorships. This is why they might want to completely partition Germany into these states. Right after this is done, France would move in to secure the Rhineland, and they would puppet these new German states, with Britain doing the same in Hanover and Kiel, and Russia in the East Prussia and Greater Poland. These are the rough borders of what this potential axis of revenge victory could look like. The thing is that there can be a three-way Cold War between the victorious European countries, as each of them wants sphere of influence into the German states and get them on their side. Italy is also a hot point between France and Britain, as they would have split the country in half, ruled by a different ideology. This world is literally 10 times more unstable and dangerous than the one in which Germany had won. If this video gets 3000 likes, I will do all endings Project Kaisertum, so I can explore all potential endings and peace treaties. Subscribe if you don't want to miss it out. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the video on the screen. Goodbye.